I come upon this ship. In this ship are a dozen gray aliens standing in a circle. They're standing around a glass table, which upon further noticing, the gray aliens with their big eyes are actually remote viewing a town in the US. And the gray aliens, their eyes are following the people. And they're working as a chorus. When the person walked out of the one Gray's field of vision, the other one picked it up. So I'm watching this totally fascinated, wondering where is this parallel universe? What's going on? Now, here's the scary part. Two of the Grays turned and they looked at me and they started coming towards me and I jumped out.
Welcome to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and this program is about exploring the ramifications of perception, awareness, how we know the world and how we don't know the world. That's why I'm so happy today to be talking to John Mack, who I think discovered something really new, something he's calling upside vision. Tom, upside vision, I know a little bit about it, but why don't you explain exactly what you mean by this?
Let me give you a little backstory about myself, because I didn't have this my whole life. This is something that I acquired or I developed about a dozen years ago. So about a dozen years ago, I went through a severe mental health crisis. I was addicted to cocaine. I had a successful business, had a nice family and everything. I had 5 years sober. So I was sober, but this time when I picked up again, something happened in my brain. And for lack of another word, I became psychotic. So I would read something. And this, I'm telling you this, connecting the dots, looking back. So I would read a paragraph or a page of something, and I would connect all these words, and I would make up another meaning in it, and I would think it was true, right? By the end of the year, I got myself clean and sober. And the catalyst was actually the first time I saw upside vision. I shouldn't say the catalyst. The catalyst, I wanted to get better, to heal my family. And I wanted to get it because I realized the things I were thinking were not true. I started to have this filter. This filter that was broken started to heal again. You're like, you know what? That's a ridiculous thought, Tom. These things are not true. They can't possibly be true. But I'm sitting on the couch one day, right? And I look over and I see, and I'll explain exactly what these look like in graphic detail in a minute, but I see 4 holographic images.
Okay.
The back of a dinosaur, blood cells moving through a body, a slot machine, and a Grim Reaper.
You actually, when you say you see this, are they there physically present in your space?
Imagine that this is presented to you as a 3D image outside your field of vision that you could focus on. Now, it's typically clear and glass with a colored tint, but I know it is not inside my brain. I know I am not using my imagination. It is not a vivid mind's eye. Right? Now, what does it look like? I'm going to give the listeners or the viewers a couple of examples to know exactly what it looks like. I'll use 2. Hopefully they've seen one of these. There's a movie, the Iron Man movie, Tony Stark, in the movies, he's in his office, Robert Downey Jr., and he's got the hologram of the whole universe in his office. It's immersive and it's around him. It's like that. If you haven't seen that, you maybe saw The Queen's Gambit on Netflix a few years ago. There's a scene where she's laying in bed, looking at the ceiling, and she's doing the move. She sees the chess pieces and she can move them with her mind. That is almost exactly what this is like.
Right.
Now, so now
it's not, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's not hallucination. People hallucinate, especially if they, no offense, been doing drugs and there's a residue. So how did you know it was exterior?
Well, no, that is a fair question. So, I first of all, I'm clean and sober 11 years. So let's start with that. So I've been clean and sober 11 years. Obviously, when this first happened, I'm like, no one is going to believe me because I was psychotic, right? Even though this thing is still here, and maybe it's a residue from mushrooms I did, or for some coke or some speed or whatever. I do not have to be high to do this, right? So as the years went on, I started playing with it, and I saw these clear images. I call it the hidden biosphere. I call it the organic metaverse. Maybe the ancients call it the Akashic record. Maybe it's the noosphere. Maybe it's some little bit of all of these things.
Wait, are you still seeing all this all the time? Are you seeing?
Yeah.
I mean, seeing it right now. I know where
I
I'm.
have to turn my attention and focus on it, but yes, I could do that right now.
So you're saying there's basically a whole other reality around you that you're perceiving.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Um, when I started researching this, I learned a new word called umwelt. And umwelt is the way a biological organisms moves through the environment. So you and I move, we're all on planet Earth. You and I are on planet Earth. Worms are on planet Earth. Birds are on planet Earth. But let's be clear, the way a worm moves through the environment with, no sight, or I'm sure they touch, but there's no vision, is completely different than the way you and I move through it. Right. So my umwelt, however I moved through the environment before, changed. Now I'm seeing more of something, and I'm seeing these beings actually that are here. We'll get to that in a minute. But so I see these things, and believe it or not, well, if they know you see them, it's like almost like walking into a jungle or a forest. There's a bunch of life there. They all are, even though you don't see them, they're still there. But let's say if there's a jaguar and it sees you, it's going to make eye contact. This is a little bit like that, but we'll get to that in a minute. So
yeah, because I do want to talk about that, because you've heard of DMT trips where they see the machine elves and all that.
absolutely.
And so, okay.
Absolutely.
So finish. Yeah, go on with the story. Yes.
No, well, so the question you asked was, how do I know it's outside? You know what I mean? And
Yes.
not hallucinating. Well, first of all, let's define hallucinations. Typically, hallucinations are you see something, you think it's real. You think it's like part of it. I know this is a holographic image. I know it's real in the sense that I'm seeing it, but I know it's not what we would define as part of reality. It's like something more. So the next question is, how do you know it's not internally? How do you know it's not something just your brain is seeing? And I'm going to answer that with a couple of examples. Number one, my eyes get tired from focusing on these things the same way your eyes get tired watching a movie or driving. Number two, my pupils dilate, right? When something is arousing or exciting, and you can't willfully dilate your pupils with a thought. It has to be an external stimuli. And the third way is when you follow something, if it's external, you follow it a smooth pursuit movement, right? Like that. If you're faking it, it jumps. You have a glitch in the system. So the reason I'm telling you this is because I knew there would be people saying, are you sure it's not internal? And I'm like, all these different ways I've gathered over the year to prove that it's external. And this culminated with me going to Ions Noetics last year, and we hooked up my brain to an EEG machine. And we did some tests, a control against upside vision. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's how I know it's external. But this is what's really cool, Alan. Once I'm engaged with it, let's say I'm going to do it right now because I have to take my glasses off.
I wanted you to do it right now so you can have a real experience. But also, go keep looking. But also, I want to ask you: is there any continuity, any logic?
No. Well, there can be. Okay, it's a man shoveling snow. That's what it is.
You see that right now.
I see a man shoveling snow. So it has nothing to do with this. I don't know. There's just a man shoveling snow. So is it related to this? Sometimes it could be, but this time it's clearly not.
Well, okay. It could be somebody I know shoveling snow. Or you somebody?
Absolutely, Alan. 100% it could be. And so let me tell you a story about that.
Wait, let me just ask you, if you were to continue looking, would you see that guy continually shoveling snow?
Yes, I would, or he would do something to maybe fade away. Or I could say, hey, drop the shovel and get in a snowblower and finish the rest of your driveway. I could influence it. So now that I'm engaged with it, 100%. 100%.
That's odd. Okay, so go ahead, continue the story. Yes.
No, well, that's what's really cool. So not only is it external, but now there's a dialogue. Now there's like, it's internal and external. And I think it's a physiological mechanism that we don't even begin to understand, just kind of like your ears hear and your mouth responds.
Well, do you ever see anyone you do know? Are they ever like people?
Definitely. My kids when they were younger, playing in the backyard. I saw myself as a boy. I saw myself as a boy throwing a Frisbee with my dad.
Maybe it is like an Akashic record field you're tapping into. Well,
perhaps.
Okay.
But let's be clear. It's not always true. The things I say I saw my kids playing in the backyard. It's some kind of remnant. It may not be accurate because I've tried, as you can imagine, to do a precog. Let's watch the Kentucky Derby. I'm going to pick the race. I will see the race in perfect upside vision, but it will not be truthful. It does not care for Tom to win the Kentucky Derby. It does not care about giving me precog things that can help me in any way like that.
Well, this really does tie in with what I've been teaching, which is remote viewing. And I say people don't even understand what remote viewing is, because what are they viewing? They're not viewing this physical world. So I did research with this guy, Henri Corbin, who talked about the Sufi mystics, and he says there's an imaginal realm, not imaginary, but imaginal, where things really exist that aren't perceivable by the ordinary senses. So that might be something.
That kind of feels like it is. Something has evolved for me to see it, right? And I think there's other people with this, and I don't think it, I know it. I've actually, I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I connected with the woman, and we had a Zoom call, and she has it, and she wants to meet. We both want to meet, because I think if we were sitting next to each other, you talk about seeing the machine elves, right? When you're tripping on acid, and when you're also tripping on acid or whatever, mescaline or anything else, there are stories of group hallucinations. So 6 guys on it, they all see the same thing, but they don't duplicate it, because they come down and they're like, oh, that was a trip. I think they all hit the same frequency. They all saw the same thing. And perhaps if I'm a control in a study like that, I can manifest an image and they can all see the image. Now, if that happens, wow, more studies need to be done, right? If I can put something there and 6 guys who are all on LSD or psilocybin or whatever see it, then we're like, okay, what's going on here? There's a communication element we need to explore.
Well, we don't have to do that. I mean, you don't have to do drugs, because just a little story, when I was out at South Dakota, Pine Ridge area, there was a UFO retreat out there. I'm with Whitley Strieber. You know who Whitley Strieber is?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I'm with Whitley Strieber, and he's looking around and he says, do you see this other world all around us? And he's seeing this other level of South Dakota. I say, no, I don't see it. So I think when he closed his eyes, he saw it. When he opened it, it disappeared. But he would see a similar landscape to where we are, but it was a whole different level of reality. I think he writes about this in Another World, in A New World, his latest book. So he had that experience, but only at that particular location where something was activated, maybe past life, whatever. But I know what you're talking about, because I was sitting right next to Whitley, and says, "Oh, you don't see what I'm seeing?" I go, "No, I'm just seeing what's." But
right. I know.
I do really believe he was seeing that. So,
of course, I don't, maybe some people are lying, but I take it that people are telling the truth, because people want answers and they're amazed at these things. And most people say it's nonsense. So I'm not that person, because I'm doing it. But again, I went out to IONS to get scientific proof. For 10 years, I emailed every serious academic, Stanford, MIT, Harvard, whatever, any scientist, any neuroscientist that was public facing. I said, listen, get me in a lab. I can do this on demand under scientific observation, right? I can get an fMRI and do it, or I can get an EEG. You can measure my brain waves when I'm doing this. I don't have to have a certain vibe. I don't have to wait for it to come in. It's always available to me.
It always is. How about dreaming? Do you have a different type of dream states?
So, yeah, well, I mean, I can lucid dream, not all the time, but I know from time to time, and I'm like, no, other than that, it's pretty good. Now, when I go to bed, hypnagogic hallucinations come in right before you go to bed. So imagine this. I'm laying in bed every night. When I shut my eyes, I see something. See a guy shoveling snow. For a while, it took me a minute to get used to. But now I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Manifest the side of a river. Or a brook. I love seeing the sides of brooks with water running down. So there I am. That's what I look at when I go to bed. And I turn it into a positive.
So you can manifest and basically see whatever you want to see.
Without a doubt.
And also you can let what's there also just come to you. So there's 2 ways.
Both of those things are true. Absolutely, Alan.
And you can also influence, see what you want to see as the thing comes to you.
Without a doubt.
And where's the name Upside Vision come from? Where's that?
Upside. I'll tell you why. Upside. I'll tell you why. My wife named it. I'm like, God, we got to come up with a name for this, because I've done so much research on this and I can't find it in any books. Dr. Pasolka, have you ever talked to her?
I just interviewed, I just actually wrote her a letter, but I know.
Oh my gosh. So I took a class from her 2 years ago and I said, listen, there's got to be a story of somebody having this with ufology or religion, something. There's nothing. I haven't found it. So if one of your viewers have a something, please send it to me because I want to know.
Well, what did Diana say? What did
She said she's never heard of it. She literally have an email.
I think you should talk to Whitley Strieber. I can make an introduction because
I think I should too.
I would understand what you're going through because I think he has aspects of that actually. So I mean,
I would imagine probably that's one of the reasons he had his experience. I think these beings, let's call us Rudolphs. We have this red nose that they can see, right? We don't know we have it, but they're seeing something and they gravitate to us. And, you know, if it's a terrible things, they can do horrible things, but some are bad, some are neutral, some are positive, some are bad at first, become positive. All the things you read about.
Well, I actually don't have it waking, but as I'm falling asleep, I actually studied with some Australian Aborigines and they talked to me about dream time. So as I'm falling asleep, what these Aborigines said to me was watch the images as they appear to you and your mind is just the observer, you know? So it's, and then I watch and I see things like two people talking that I've never heard of or conversation, and I just watch it. I'm not reacting. I'm just watching it, but only in that alter, not like in this moment, but maybe. So I think there is a flow of the infinite that comes. It seems very arbitrary, like a guy shoveling snow to me in these states. But do you ever? But in those states, sometimes if I'm deep enough, I can enter that dream. Do you enter the hallucination in a sense?
Yeah, like remote viewing, astral projection, sure. Yeah, I can play with it. And when I first happened, I got obsessed with math. I got obsessed with math and I did tons of homework on math because there's a multi-dimensional element to it. There's no topological space or manifold that I cannot manifest, cut in half and do all wild things with. I want to tell you a story. I think that you'll find it really interesting because there's like a precog element or a telepathy element, or I don't know what we would call this. Maybe you can tell me after I tell the story. So I'm meeting with two businessmen, and we're in this big high tower, and I'm telling them about this. And they said, do it for us right now. Right. And I'm like, all right, it's kind of weird because oh, wait, actually, and then I got to say how I got the name UPSIGHT. We got to come back to that. But let's tell the story first. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, you know what I'm seeing? I'm seeing a brand new sports car and I don't know what it means. So I tell this story. It's a brand new sports car. One of the gentlemen, he pulls out his phone and he shows me a picture. He just bought a brand new sports car.
Was it the one you saw? Was it the?
Well, I don't know. It was similar. No, it wasn't the exactly the same, but still, that element of it is extraordinary.
Yeah, no. So, okay, so that's a sign of psychic vision, but what can you do with this thing? Okay, talk about UPSIGHT and what that
so my wife said you're usually up and looking. She goes, I said insight. She's like, well, you usually look. She's like, what about UPSIGHT? So it just stuck. I love UPSIGHT vision because I look up, it is a sight, it's an additional type of vision. You know, the vision is the eyes are the most evolved part of the brain. So something additional is happening with my vision. There's no doubt. So when you say, what can I do with it? From a practical standpoint, like a practical standpoint, that is still under exploration, right? It is still under exploration. Right now, my mission, I'll tell you what my mission is now, is to find other people with this ability to probably get back to ions with a group of us so we can get a larger data set and see what's going on. And then, as I said earlier, I think we could connect with each other and communicate through UPSIGHT non-verbally, non-sign language. I truly believe that could happen.
But the bigger question is, can you teach people this? Maybe you can't because you don't know how it's happening, but maybe you can.
Well, I do think I can, but I can't teach it to somebody who can't do it. So I absolutely think I can teach it. Everyone can't do it. Think about it. I compare it to singing. Everyone can sing a little bit, but we're not all Sinatra. Everyone can't be Sinatra, right? So I know I've seen actually, that's a precog thing. I've seen myself teaching classes, right? But I'm not just going to tell everyone they can do it. There's going to be a test. There's going to be a multi-layered test because I want to make sure we're really seeing the same thing. I don't want to tell someone I can help them and do that unless I really can help them.
Well, I get a sense of what you're saying because maybe I have an aspect of that, but would everyone see the same thing? I mean, has that been proven, or is this particular to you?
No, well, that's what I think is true. So let's talk about that for a minute. There's two things that I have pictures of. So this is everyone knows what a double rainbow looks like, right? You got the small rainbow, which is darker, and outside of that, you have a diffused lighter rainbow. One has got the purple on the inside ring, and the other one's got the purple on the outside ring. Now, that is an observation from perspective. It's an illusion created by water and all these things. UPSIGHT vision takes this and I can get a side view. I can turn the side. And what we think of as flat and one circle on top of another, I see as a funnel. UPSIGHT vision shows me as a funnel. In fact, that inner darker ring is coming towards the viewer, right? It squeezes so much, let's call it the electromagnetic spectrum, some part of it squeezes so much, and then it unravels and it goes out. And that secondary rainbow is going away like a Doppler effect, and it's diffused. So what we see is two circles, one smaller, one bigger, I see as a funnel. So if somebody else sees that, now we're seeing the same thing.
So you're seeing more like fourth or higher dimensionally aspects of this.
Absolutely. Well, for sure I am. Yeah.
Well, so I was just thinking then if you do that, before you look, do you have to do something internally to make it appear? You're just looking up, but do you have to go into a state, or does your state shift?
I have to shift my attention. I cannot do this driving. You cannot do it driving. You know, if I'm driving a car and you're sitting next to me, Alan, I'm like, oh, do you remember the Jaws poster as a kid? You're going to remember it, right? And you're going to use your mind's eye to recall it. If I can do the same thing driving, I can't do this because I literally have to look to see that Jaws poster. So I could be as a passenger, but not as a driver. So to answer your question, all is needed is a shift in attention.
So when you look, can they measure? And maybe I know a guy who measures brain waves, alpha, beta, here in Sedona, actually, and he can measure if when you're looking, your brain waves are shifting.
So that's exactly what we did at IONS this summer. Okay, so we had 200 tests, 200 of these tests, and it was the control was they brought up an image. Let's say it was an image of the Eiffel Tower, and then they'd say memory recall, and I would use my memory recall to think of it. Then they'd say UPSIGHT vision. Then I would use my eyes to focus on it outside of me in my field of vision. Now, we did that for 200 tests, alpha, beta, gamma, theta, all the waves, and we saw the changes in it. Now, the guy that runs this, the guy that oversaw the EEG tests, he's done 160 of these. He said this was it was without a doubt unambiguous. Now, what was really interesting was the biggest changes. There were changes in all, from memory recall to UPSIGHT vision, but was on the alpha wavelengths. It was the alpha, and that's when you're relaxed. That is when you're
the alpha wavelength that was happening during the UPSIGHT vision, you're saying?
Yes, it was like a bright blue, but it was bright blue is how the image looks, which means when I'm in a relaxed state, my brain isn't relaxed. It's working really hard to look at these images. Mostly we're relaxed, but when I'm using UPSIGHT, the alpha wavelengths are working really hard. I would have thought it was going to be the theta waves for dreams. Now, don't get me wrong, there was a difference there, but the alpha waves were off the charts, for lack of another word.
Well, that's my theory, is that there is some sort of shifting of brain vibration when you're doing the UPSIGHT, right? I mean, that's what it seems like.
There's a shift of everything. There's a shift. And you want to know something funny? We'll talk about this, right? While I'm doing the test, and you got to remember, I can't move. You got to be very still. You can't move your eyes or anything. You're not supposed to. So, and this is holographic, but I'm looking at this holographic image and there is a gray alien that pops up every now and then. Now I have to ignore that guy, right? Because I want to make sure it doesn't interfere with this. So I wrote about that on a Twitter thread because it was like, I thought to myself, well, if this was another type of test, what's happening to my brain waves when this creature is there, right? But that would have been a whole nother series of tests.
Well,
So
that would
these
be
things don't.
interesting. Is it always the same alien that pops
No,
up?
no, no, no. Those are, I say, mischievous. Those are the most annoying ones. They used to show up all the time when I was doing math. Like, I don't know what their goal is. Anytime I was paying attention to something, or anytime I was trying to, not anytime, many times when I was trying to do something, they would come in and honestly annoy me, like a puppy coming into the room, or I don't know if they did it on purpose or whatever. Probably puppy's not a good. That's probably not a good way to describe them. An annoying creature comes in and wants your attention. Now, I don't know why. I don't consider myself a star seed. I don't have any insight into what these beings want or do. It's not like we have a relationship or anything like that. But they do show up.
Well, that's something Whitley would be interested in. And I think what you're seeing is part of the realities that they exist in. So I think I wouldn't say.
Yeah, I need to have a conversation with him. You're the third person that said that. So I think this will happen. You were literally the third person in the last 7 days that said you should talk to Whitley. So yeah, if you could do an intro, that'd be fun.
I
That'd
will
be
do
cool.
an intro. But I have one more question or like possibility. How would you, I mean, I get a sense of what you're saying. So how would you teach me? Is it always looking up to where are you, right? Are you looking up to the right?
No, no, no. It could be anywhere. I could look down. I can look down. I just do it like that as a habit, you know? It doesn't have to be.
You look up, but then what happens internally do you do? So you're not just looking up, because you could look up and just see the ceiling, right? Will something shift as you're looking up internally?
Oh, I'll just tell you right now. So I could do this right now facing you with my eyes shut, but it would be more of a strain. See, this is what's interesting. It's so physical. That's why I know my eye muscles. It's much easier to take my glasses off and look at the wall, because that's a more comfortable to see that. I can see this thing on the wall.
So, now, so why don't you just lead me through it if I was going to do this with you? So let's just start with me and then, okay, we're starting here all at like 0 base. Now, what would you have me do?
I would say, do you see anything moving? Do you see anything, let's call it a clear, any kind of waves at all?
I see little shadows that are shifting. I don't see any. I mean, I could imagine seeing something, but I could.
So this is the challenge. It's not, you don't imagine it. That was the hardest thing for years. I'm like, I'm not imagining this. I'm seeing it. Right.
You're actually seeing it as like you're seeing the video, the screen, all that.
Like anything, just like somebody walking in here. That's what's so extraordinary. That's what's so
extraordinary. Let me see. Oh, let me see if I can join. Okay, so you're looking. What are you seeing now?
All right, you know what? I'm gonna think something, and let's try this quantum Let's try this quantum thing. Let's see. I'm gonna see an image. I'm gonna tell you what I'm seeing. I'm gonna think about it. Maybe you can pick it up. Maybe you'll pick it up, not as an image, but as a thought. Let's try that.
Okay.
Hold on. I'm not getting anything yet.
Don't mean to influence you. Okay.
No. I know, but it's so I have to be patient because I know we're on a podcast, but
okay. No, it's okay. Take your time. We're fine. I'm looking too.
Okay. I got it.
What do you got? What do you see?
No, I don't know. I'm not telling you. I see something. I want you to know what, if you're picking up
I get anything. The feeling I just came to me of a horse. Is it something like?
No, it is a man with a flashlight walking around looking for something. Yeah, that's it. I don't know if you can see, but I'm following it through the room. See, this is what's wild. I'm following it this way. So it doesn't care where I am. It's going to do this thing, and I have to follow it, right? I don't know. I don't know if I did that naturally, but I don't know if you could see it. I don't know if I was thinking it, but it's crazy.
But do you actually, and I think maybe you are actually seeing the imaginal realm, the imaginal mundi, they call it in Jungian terms.
Well, again, maybe I'm stuck on the word imaginal, but it's not imaginary, correct?
No, it's not imaginary. This is why Henri Corbin came up with this idea when he was looking at the literature of these Persian Sufi saints. He was translating and said, I can't call this imaginary because these are real places that these people are looking into. So it's not imaginary, but he says it doesn't exist on a physical realm or an intellectual realm. It exists on a whole other plane. And he labeled it the imaginal mundus, the world.
That's good. I like it. I like that a lot. I'm going to do some research on that. That's
Do some
exactly, I mean,
research
I don't know
on
if it's exactly the same thing.
Precog and his and there's been some books about him, and he's kind of discovered this whole other world that maybe you're tapping into, which I also think remote viewing accesses as well. When people remote view, they're not actually remote viewing this world, they're remote viewing a shadow of this world, or this world's a shadow of this imaginal realm. So but so I wasn't getting anything you were saying, and this, would you think, is it the same guy that was shoveling the snow that had the flashlight, or are you seeing?
It was something else. It was another person. Again, a lot of times it'll be a silhouette, and I'm thinking, who is that? And all of a sudden that person will come into, and by the way, they're more silhouettes. They can be graphic 3D. Like I find this interesting. Now, this is a very specific thing. I can see a 3D diagram of things like a solar system, the side of a car, railway station, or a car. But when it comes to people, it's less detailed. I can't see the pores on a person's face at all. I find that really interesting.
Now, what would really freak you out, probably, I mean, you're seeing things, but if you started to hear words, you ever hear anything in relationship to the vision?
So I don't. So that is actually a really good question. I don't hear them, but I do get thoughts as if like, oh, this is, that's part of it. So it's not to hear the word, I think the word, if that makes sense. Yeah, I'll think the word. I'm like, oh wait, this is part of the experience. Yeah, this is part of the experience.
Well, give me an example of like that, of something that happened where you saw something and you heard and you thought a word, or psychically heard.
Actually, let me give you an example. Let me think about that while I'm telling this story about remote viewing, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please. I teach remote viewing, so tell me. Yes.
Okay, actually, you could tell me if you think this is remote viewing or astral projection, because it has something to do. It was in space. Now, when I think of remote viewing, I think of what the military taught. You have a target, you have to hit the target. That's the technical definition. I like the more expansive one. You could be doing remote viewing, but fail a test about that. It's like you can be singing, because you don't hit the C note, you're still singing, but you're not doing what the person that's running the test wants you to do. So that's how I see it. So I'm going to tell that story with this in mind. This is a dozen years ago, I'm looking into space and I see, I'm just looking off. And all of a sudden I come upon this ship. In this ship are a dozen gray aliens standing in a circle. They're standing around a glass table, which I first look at and I think is empty. Upon further noticing, the gray aliens with their big eyes are actually remote viewing a town in the US, and the people are there and everything like that. And the gray aliens, their eyes are following the people. And they're working as a chorus. When the person walked out of the one gray's field of vision, the other one picked it up. So I am sitting there and watching this, and this is maybe a minute. This is not a great amount of time. And remember, I'm new to this. This is a dozen years ago. So I'm watching this totally fascinated, wondering where is this parallel universe? What's going on? Now, here's the scary part. Two of the grays turned and they looked at me and they started coming towards me, and I jumped out, right? I'm like, forget it. I couldn't, this was so weird to me.
Wait, they looked at you in your vision, they looked at you and started to come towards you. And then
yes, like they were going to, if I had maybe been more prepared, I would have talked to them. I don't know. But even with that said, remember that I've seen them since then, and we don't communicate. There's not really a element of communication. Now, one time, a little over a year ago, I did have a literally lucid dream remote viewing. I thought a gray alien was my room. I wrote about this I have a YouTube video that talks about this, where it held me in its hands and it showed me my whole future, and then it disappeared and my head fell back into the pillow. So that was the only gray alien experience I would say that was positive. Right. So I wonder if are all gray aliens the same, right? Or some, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't think they're all the same. They're sort of not exactly like people. I think there is a group consciousness, but have you ever had a negative gray alien experience?
Well, not negative, annoying, not abduction. No. Yeah. Now, this happened. Back to my story, back when I was psychotic and traveling the globe, I'm in St. John's Island, right? Totally alienated from everybody. And I'm in the room and I am doing a lot of drugs, coke, drinking, pot, whatever. And I build this galaxy. I use strings, ropes, clothes. I hang it from the ceiling in my room, and I hang it. I draw a picture of the stars, and I'm under the influence, so I'm that unreliable narrator. But I use the fan in the middle above my bed as a fulcrum, and I built this galaxy, this star system, right? So I think that was the beginning of me having this stuff coming in, but since I was under the influence, it wasn't coming in any helpful way. It was all muddled. So I don't say I was abducted. I look back and I'm like, maybe I was coerced to get away because they needed me to be away from the family to do things. I don't know. I
Wait,
don't
so
know.
how many
That's part of the
years?
story.
How many years were you sober from the time you quit to the time the UPSIGHT started? Was there how many?
So let's say I got sober. Well, I got sober when I was 40. I picked up again at like 45, 46. And then 2 years later, and within a couple of years, I lost my mind. So,
Right,
and then since I've been sober, I got sober at 49 and I'm 60 now.
right, 49. So when did the UPSIGHT start from 49
At the
on?
end of my, it started literally a year. I had my first break December 28th, 2011. I saw UPSIGHT December 28th, 2012. 1 year to the day after I had this psychotic event, which I tried to burn my house down, which is in the book.
Really? So exactly 1 year. What day did you say? September what?
December 28th.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. So 1 year later, something just and did it shocked you, right? When you saw this for the first time.
Oh, I was in awe. Not a scary shock, right? I was like, wow, this is really cool. But then I was high when I did the first time I did it, I was high, right? And I'm like, I know I can see this without drugs. And I, confirmed that.
Wait, so you saw this and you started to be curious. Is that the whole idea?
I was absolutely curious. I knew that when you see something that graphic and you could do it again and again, I was like, I have to spend, I don't want to say, well, actually, what am I saying? I do want to say, I want to spend the rest of my life figuring out what this is. You know?
And yeah, no, I think it's fascinating, and it would be really fascinating if other people could see exactly what you see. But you haven't met anyone who can do
No, I
that.
have. I've met one woman. I just talked to her just
Oh,
yesterday.
oh,
I
oh,
literally had a Zoom call with her. She's, yeah, don't want to say her name because she's very uncomfortable because she was told she was crazy her whole life, right? They're like, no, you're not seeing this. When she heard my story on another podcast, she emailed me. She's like, please talk to me. So I talked to her. I'm like, no, makes total, everything she said made total sense to me. But she didn't do any drugs. She doesn't, well, that's not true. She did some drugs, but she had it before that. She had this as a child.
Wait, but if are you going to get together with her and see if you see the same thing?
I am. It's going to be a couple of months, but that's on the calendar.
That would be interesting, because if you can see the same thing, then you can see this as an actual external
Absolutely.
world.
Yes. And I think, let me say this, you've got people that are curious, watch your show. I will imagine one or two of them have something like this, and maybe even have exactly like this, but they don't talk about it because when they do, people tell them they're ridiculous or crazy, and nobody wants to be told they're crazy.
Well, what I get is that, and this is how dreaming, I think, works, and no one says that, and remote viewing is there's a constant flow of the unknown, the infinite, the Akasha, the quantum field, into our consciousness, into our right brain. So, it can take the shape of images. I think for me, in the dreaming sense, because my logical mind can disconnect. So maybe there was some kind of disconnection or to the logical world because of the drugs, possibly, or just because you shifted, that is allowing this other realm to flow into your conscious awareness.
Well, it's there's no brain damage, right? There was no stroke, no drug use, brain damage. I had 2 MRIs, no lesions or tumors or anything. So it's not pathological, right?
Yeah.
And during my second MRI, I tried to do this. And I'm like, you know what? The big spinning magnets, I thought it was electromagnetic spectrum, something like that. And I was like, if this is that case, then I'm not going to be able to do this in here. But I could do it in there. I did it in there.
Well, there's this book. Let me just get this book. I think right here. It is, yeah. Ian Oh, I don't see that. Let me just see. And
Oh,
McGilchrist.
McGilchrist. McGilchrist, yes. Did you interview him?
No, I'd like to. Did you read
Oh,
this
he's
book?
so good. I love that book. Yeah.
Oh, so does that any of this where the right brain has become equal, the right brain access to the infinite awareness has kind of,
So
yeah.
when I first had this, I didn't, again, I say I read the book. I know the book. I see he does a great video, a 14-minute video presentation talking about it. And it all made sense about the master and the emissary, but it's just helpful. That's all it is. It's just helpful to break it apart, you know? It's still, I don't know what part of my brain is, you know, I can't sit there and tell you. Actually, yes, I can. It's both logical, right, from the mathematics perspective and the diagram perspective, but it's also creative because I can change these things with a thought. But again, it is external, right? It starts external, let's say, then it becomes internal.
But I mean, I believe you, but how do you know it is actually external? People,
Well,
oh,
the only way I told you about you can't willfully dilate your pupil. It's
no,
an
but you
external
could be
stimulus.
hallucinating, or I'm not saying it isn't, or it could be real. You could be seeing a whole other universe that's
Well, we
right.
have to get more evidence. I agree with you. We have to get more evidence. And
Right.
that's what I started. And I was supposed to go to the Smith Kettlewell Eye Institute, and we were going to get me in an MRI to do the different kind of testing to do, because they do eye vision stuff. But this was before COVID, and the lab director, some things changed, and it just fell apart. So I was
Well,
thankful that Ions was interested in doing another test, but that should be done because I understand if people are still, are you sure? But no, we will, I plan on, hope to, will someday prove it's external. We just have to get more evidence.
right. So, okay. So you just did a few samples today and they were kind of mundane, but have you ever seen, I mean, you saw the grays, but what has really shocked you when you up-sighted?
Okay, so there's another image. I talked about the rainbow, which is interesting. Now I see the DNA strand, right? I can see the quantum small, let's call it small DNA strand, and I see these candy cane hooks, right, wrapping around the DNA. And I have a picture of this also on my YouTube channel. And what I'm seeing interacting with our DNA is not part of our world. It's some dark matter or whatever you're calling it, the imaginal realm, interacting with our three-dimensional matter realm. That blows my mind. In fact, I see the DNA strand before, I see these candy canes interacting with it. At this part, the image with the candy canes, and then image after. The candy canes do something. So it's like 1, 2, 3. And I'll compare it to this. When we see a cell divide, it's got 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and then it turns into a frog or a human. I see the same thing with this realm or these candy cane images. I call them dark matter images interacting with DNA, and it does something next. Now, I think if I'm seeing the same thing someone else is seeing, it doesn't matter where we are. I'll see it. The other person will see the exact same things. That will be another way to prove that it's external.
But what are they DNA of? Can you follow that through and see?
No, I don't know. I can't. I'm not a subject matter expert. I don't know. I just see it interacting with a DNA strand.
You don't know whose DNA strand that would be,
No,
right?
no, no. I don't know who or where. No, I have no idea.
I mean, could you look into your own body and see your own DNA or
Well, I've seen,
organs?
yeah, I don't know. I don't trust that. No. Here's the thing too. This is not true. It's not honest. You know what I mean? Even though the images are perfect or they can be, it's not, I don't trust this thing. I would not, I would not set my watch to what it told me, you know? I would definitely, because it's got a trickster element, or there's an element of not caring if it shows me the truth because it's a parallel dimension or whatever. Even though these images are clear, they're not necessarily true. And that was one of the things I learned at the very beginning. So even if it showed me something internally, I don't know, I wouldn't trust it, or until more of us can do it, you know, and figure out a way to find out if it's true.
Well, that's one of the things Whitley does say, that he doesn't trust there's a trickster element to the gray agenda. And he says that exactly. I mean, sometimes he says that. But if you look at something like the DNA, you can also remotely influence it as well, right? So you can influence the DNA. That's, I
So
think.
yes, I can make the candy canes do certain things. I can make the DNA strand do certain things, but I don't know what that does, right? I don't know. All I'm sitting there and say, let's say I just say cut it with like a crisper, just cut it right in the middle. I don't know what that does. I don't have the ability to even know what that is. The
Mm,
fact that I can watch it as a viewer, like you watch a sunset, to me is extraordinary.
mm.
I can watch this, I can see this place if I wanted to. Think about this. I could sit on a couch, get rid of the TV, stare at a wall because it's not a wall, and so all these images come in. I could do this all day long. I never get bored. I mean, you know what I mean? You don't ever get bored because there's always something going on.
Well, let me
Always.
that brings up a question. If you're in different if you are looking at a sunset or you're in a house, do you get different images or in the woods or
That's I've tried. I'm like, okay, is it different at the shore? So let me say this, and this is not proven. This is still I'm in the, and I think it's a little bit stronger on the beaches in the shore for whatever reason, right? Um, it's certainly if I'm in the city, it's interfered with by I don't know if it's more brains or people or the buildings. It's not that it doesn't work because it does, right? If I'm in a here you go. This is very specific. So let's say I'm in I'm seeing a play, a musical, right? I've got all these brains around me, and I look over, I do UPSIGHT, and I see it, right? And it's hard, and it's almost like people are yelling into your brain, even though people may not be speaking, it's you get that element, and but it is disconnected. Now, if I'm this happened one time, and it was so cool that I'm talking about it now. I'm in the front of the plane in the first class section on an airplane. All the brains are behind me, right? Like a battery. And I'm at the front, and it was like it was amplified, right? It was like I was getting the energy from the other brains. Now that was wild. So as good as it is, it was even clearer, crisper. And I don't know, more in focus. It's always in focus, but it was louder. It's hard to explain unless you see it. It's almost like it was a better image. So I was thinking to myself, wow, does somebody on the plane have this? Are all the other brains working as a battery to help me increase this? I don't know, but it was really interesting test because you think about it, you're in a tube, right? And all the people were behind me. And by the way, I've done it on other flights when I wasn't in first class in the middle of the plane, and it didn't happen.
Mm. Do you think there could be, I don't know, an implant of sorts in your brain?
They didn't show anything because I asked about the MRIs. There's nothing there. If it's there, it's so tiny they didn't pick it up. I was
Or
like, are you sure nothing's going on here, guys?
an etheric implant or something? But also, if you're looking at someone in the same room, it might be easier instead of on video. Would you start to have an overlay of things about that person if you're
Well,
staring?
think about the story I told you about the sports car.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
perhaps. I don't know. And now this is not upside directly related, but it is definitely related about my being open. There's been two times in the last dozen years where I was in the presence of somebody that was evil. I mean, I knew it. One time I'm at a GNC and this guy's trying to help me, and I'm like, this man has, done something horrible to children, and I had to get out of there. It was so creepy. And another time I'm in an
Well,
AA
what
meeting,
did you
actually.
see though? I mean, a lot of people
Oh
would
no,
feel,
I didn't see anything. No, that's what I'm saying. I
oh,
didn't
you just
see
felt
anything.
it.
I felt this just horribleness,
Yeah.
right? Almost like it's like you smell a septic tank, but I felt it. Um, and another time I was in an AA meeting and a guy sat next to me and I'm like, this guy's murdered people. You know what I mean? I just know it. It's again, I didn't see it. It was just this feeling that comes along with this ability. But
Well,
my wife is like, Tom, if that's true, she goes, that's not a bad statistics for all the people you've come in contact for the last dozen years that only two have made you unsettled. I'm
but a
like,
lot
okay,
of people have that kind of sensing. That's
sure,
not
sure.
upside. That's something
No,
else.
no, no, no.
That's just a sensitivity. But I'm saying
Sure.
if you were to look at someone, I mean, a good or somebody who's not evil, but look at them, could you start to tune into their body or their mind or their thought? I mean, you did it with the car, but if you really focused on that person with upside, could you have?
Yes, I think so. That is something that needs to be done. I haven't done it. I haven't done it. My wife, I've done it with my wife some, but there's no one that's volunteered. There's no one I've wanted to do it with. But yes, I absolutely think I could pick up some things coming from them. I can't imagine how it could be otherwise.
Right. No, that would be very interesting to see if, because then maybe you could do healing on a person. If you right, have you thought of the healing
No,
aspect?
no, I've thought about it. I just, again, it goes back to the teaching side of it. I'm still in the explorer phase. I think I can teach it. I don't want to make a promise I can't do. And I don't want to say I can heal somebody or see their aura. Or I no, let's put it this way. I will see an aura. Let me be clear. I will see it, but I don't know how it's helpful. How about that? See what I mean?
Well, I see what you mean, but I think because you have that capability, if you see a way you can remote influence, there's remote viewing, but remote influence, so you could send them light, you could send them love, you could send, and then see if their auric field changes or adjusts or somehow.
You know what? It's certainly something worth exploring deeper. And I've thought about it, but I just get onto other things. Yeah, I've definitely thought about that, but
Well,
I just
I think you have this for a reason. And I think maybe the first phase is just viewing, but the influencing in a positive way could be something that could be
I like
helpful.
that. I like that, Alan. I mean, I like that idea a lot.
Mhm.
Um, I do. I think that I mean, I know I try to be as positive as possible. And let's be, the fact that I stayed sober since I had this, right? That's something right there. I mean, I wanted to stay sober. I'm connected to my family. The book has a happy ending. Everyone loves everyone. We're all happy together. This made us stronger.
Well, it's not my business and it may be outside the scope of the conversation, but do you know why? Not to be, you started doing the drugs in the first place? I mean, is that you feel comfortable talking
Yeah,
about?
well, you know what? Yeah, because I'm 60 years old. In the 70s, when I was a kid, they're like, "Oh, cocaine's not addictive." Guess what? It is. They used to say it wasn't addictive. Yeah, just I like to party, and then there was I guess my parents got divorced actually when I was in my 20s, and that's when I started using it. So there was definitely a catalyst for that. There was a trauma, and we haven't touched on this, but this may be trauma related, right? The
Yeah.
whole thing with my psychosis and my family crumbling and me walking out on my business, that there may be a trauma element. I mean, not never mind. In addition to the drugs I had put in me, my body and physical trauma and mental trauma may all this combined needed something, or something was created somehow to help me navigate the rest of my life and ground me.
Mm.
But who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah. No, have you done ayahuasca? I'm not saying you should, but have you done
No, no,
that?
no. No, I did. No, I never did ayahuasca. I did some, psilocybin LSD with the year I partied, but I
No, but
haven't done that.
since the
No,
upside,
no, and I haven't done a regression either. I have not done that, and I haven't done a hypnosis regression, and I'm very curious about that.
what would you regress to? Where would you
I
go?
don't know. I don't know. People are saying, "Well, do you think you were abducted?" I don't remember it.
You could
People,
be,
that's
especially because those grays are showing up for you.
sure.
Yeah, so you're in the exploratory phase. It's pretty fascinating that you are. I don't think you're the only one doing it. Certainly, from what Whitley told me personally, I was saying he's had aspect. Maybe other people do. It is. It may be you are being activated to a process other people will eventually tap into. There's that as well.
That's what it feels like. I'm just telling you, Alan, that's exactly what it feels like. This has been a calling, and I can't say no to it. It's really weird, and it's in a healthy way. You know what I mean? It's not a bad thing. It's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. When I've done a lot of these podcasts, well, a handful in the last since the academic study is up for peer review. I said, you know what? Let's connect us. I think this is helping humanity. I mean, I know that's broad, but I would like to, so nobody has to go through what I went through, right? And if I can answer somebody's questions, I would love to be helpful in that way.
Mm.
And that's what I really want to do, and get more, and then again, get more data to see what's going on. Because if we're supposed to see this other realm, or some of us, I think it's supposed to help us. Maybe it's going to help us with climate control. Maybe there's some other beings that are coming. Maybe they're, all this stuff you're seeing in the news about UFOs. Maybe there's something that's tapping into there, and we need to be prepared.
You should
Feels
talk
like,
to Anthony Peake too, as someone who deals. Do you know Anthony Peake? He
I know the name, but I can't remember
I think
why.
he does reference hallucinogenics a bit, but he also mentions that what Socrates, the story of Socrates, he would stare off into the world and the daemon. not the
Yeah.
demon, the D-A-I-M-O, daimon would come to him and guide him in these like visions he would have. And so this may be part of a daimonic kind of understanding. There's a book by Patrick Harper called Daimonic Realities, and he talks about this. Anthony Peake talks, other people talk about the positive effect of the connecting to the daimon, which transcends the ego. So that might be another.
You know, it's I call them, they're not always there. And it's not like I see them like I see the grays, but I think there's these non-human intelligence guide. There's an NHI guide that's guiding me that will not typically show itself. That's what it feels like. I certainly cannot prove that. You know what I mean? But it feels like, and it's benevolent. It's not malevolent.
No, it's there to help you and guide you and
Absolutely.
maybe give you visions of
Kind of like, hey, maybe think about doing this. It won't make me do anything. There's nothing, I'm never forced to do anything, or it doesn't feel that way.
Right.
It doesn't feel like I'm ever forced to do anything. It feels like there's some things, and I'm like, I think I need to, or I wonder, like, let's make this decision, and I feel good about it. You know what I mean? You feel good about it. You know when you're making the right choice.
Well, it sounds like the daemon. You should have you heard that term, the daemon?
Yeah, I have.
It sounds like that.
When I think of it, I usually think of, now, I mean, you can educate me here. When I think of it, I usually think there's an image of something with it. The daemon usually shows itself as something. Now, there was an elk I saw for years, and I thought that was my daemon, my symbolic daemon, but I haven't seen it in years.
No,
and that doesn't. Yeah.
I don't think the daemon necessarily is an image. It's I think it's an aspect of ourselves, the higher aspect. So you might see a higher part of you, and maybe you should call on, don't know, the higher parts of you to start to explain what's going on, and then you try some automatic writing where you can just do that.
Yeah, no, and let me just tell you, I have done that, and it still needs work. I don't get the answers that make me say, oh, this is correct. It's really interesting, and I wonder if that's part of the journey, right? It's not like it's not telling me exactly. It's like think about this. It's almost like the cone thing. You need to think about something else, you know? So yeah, I like that idea. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that too again.
Well, it's not going to give you the answers right away. You have to kind of write through the kind of it's like a trail into a kind of inner chamber, and you have to follow that kind of path in and get rid of all the distractions, and will take you, I think, to the center if you follow the thread back to an answer. I mean, perhaps.
Yeah, well, I would love that. You know,
Well,
it's
you
funny.
just
I think
have to
every time do you get an answer, you get another question. You know, it's funny. I want to tell this one other thing too.
Yeah.
From the math perspective. So, you know, there's this thing in our society with the gamification of everything. You almost like you answer this question, it turns green. Once you're done, it gets to the next level, right? That's where we see it everywhere around us. They were showing me this daemon, right? This non-human intelligence, this guide was showing me how to build this mathematical structure. It is a coordinate system. The coordinate system itself, the math involved with the coordinate system is undergraduate college mathematics, but the coordinate system that I've built over the years is extraordinarily complex. I could, with the right team, and I've thought about this a lot, and I say this a lot, build this software because it's so cool. And I think that's part of my journey too. I'm just not there yet with the right team. And I think I want to make this thing because I see it. I see every aspect of it. And it's like nothing out there. It's like no mathematical models of anything I've seen. Nothing at all.
Right. To sort of wrap it up, what can we do for you? How can we help you? I mean, you're asking for people to come forward.
Sure. Yeah, I have there's a Facebook page called UPSIGHT Vision. If you think you have it, it's kind of a support group, even though there's like only 8 people on there. If you want to join and leave a comment, please do. And if you want to email me, you can just leave a message there. There's an email for me on that website as well, on the Facebook page. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Tom E. Matt, M-A-T-T-E. You'll see it says Tom Matt UPSIGHT Vision. But the next step for me is to try to find more people with this and connect us. and then, you know, like I said, prove or collect evidence that I am in fact seeing something external, and humans can access it. Not just every once in a while, but as part of we evolve moving forward. It's not scary, it's just different and new and really cool.
Well, you might also be interested in talking to Tracy Dolan. Do you know her? She's married
I
to.
do. Yeah, I think that would be great. I would love to talk to Tracy, and I know someone who knows her, but I will, if you could do a Whitley intro, I would appreciate it.
I
I
will
think
do
that
that.
makes sense.
What Tracy actually said in one of her lectures is that people, there's some kind of device that can actually photograph your dreams. So
Wow.
it would be interesting. I don't know what that device is. She just touched on it once, but that
Well, I
would
like
be.
the idea of technology. I like the idea of creating technology that can see what I see. Can you, like an infrared thing? What if we could do that? Because like I said, when I'm doing it, we could create the technology around me doing it.
Mhm.
And when it's focusing it, when it's like, okay, do you see it? I'm like, what if we've got a machine? I don't know what this is. As I'm saying it, they're like, oh, now I see it. Now we're I don't know what we're doing actually, but it would be really cool for everyone to see what I see.
Well, I think from what you're saying, I think you're seeing a realm that's like interdimensional. This is my theory, and it overlaps this realm, and it comes in and out. But maybe the bleed through to other dimensions is becoming more the membrane's becoming thinner, and right.
That feels right, Alan. Of all the things we talked about, that I feel like you're onto something there. That feels like that's happening. We're approaching, and people have talked about it forever, but the fact I think we're getting closer in the bleed through. That's a perfect way. The veil is unveiling.
The veil is lifting. You know, who also
Yes,
talks about this is Bashar. You know, Bashar, the channel
yes.
Bashar. He talks about parallel right here, overlapping every second you make a sort of decision, another universe, the multiverse kind of theory. You've heard that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I wonder if you ever see yourself right, if you're living in that realm somehow.
I've seen myself for sure. I've seen myself younger now and older, which is good
Right.
because it means I get older.
I wonder if the grays do have an answer for you also, that if you.
Who knows? That's why it would be cool to, like I said, Whitley knows. Whitley's got a longer history around. It's funny, I read his book in 1989 or 88, whenever it came
Right.
out. I remember reading it just as a somebody who like, oh, I got to read this. And then 89, 99, 2009, 22 years later, something like that happens to me. That's wild.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe you are at the forefront, and maybe it's going to happen to all of us, and we start. And
I think that too, actually. I really do. I really do. I
maybe
absolutely, who knows?
your work is to prepare people for the, I would say, impossible, that, you know, if you prove this is another world and make it easier for other people to accept this interfacing. I mean,
Exactly. So think about that. I stayed away from new age stuff for the first 8 years because I'm like, I want to make sure it's, that boring academic science, but they're not, maybe they're getting here slowly. Maybe they're like, hold on, there's something else going on, this extra physical, there's something here. They're getting there slowly, but I didn't start getting answers until I made a choice to say, okay, let's look in places I said I was never going to look because I thought I shouldn't look there, you
right.
know? And since then it's moved forward a lot more quicker.
If you could also talk, I have some really good friends who are Australian Aborigines because I spent some time over there. Dreamtime, they go to a real place in Dreamtime. This world's illusionary. That place, and it's a place, it's a state of is Dreamtime, and you're sort of doing that.
So there's a second person that talked to me about that too. Well, honestly, you said the same thing about the Aboriginals. Yeah. And they said they talk just like this. And the Greys are there too. They call them something else. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, you might not be the first person, or you might be the first person to discover this realm. And is that what you do? Is that your job? Is that what you do every
Well,
day?
No, I'm in marketing. I do
Oh,
marketing
oh,
still, but I don't think I'm the first to discover this realm. I
right.
think I'm the first that can access this and do it under lab conditions,
Mhm.
right? I do think that. I think other people have gone in and out of it. I think there's people now that are doing it. They might be doing it under another, they might be doing it in a different way. Or they're afraid of it because sometimes you see horrible things, Alan. Let's be honest too.
Uh,
Anything you can imagine or seen on a movie, I've also seen, but you look away. You're like, oh, why am I seeing that?
right, right.
So yeah, I think my again is to connect people and to do more research on it and do it in a way that's not completely woo. You know the term woo, right? People
Yeah.
dismiss it, right?
Right. I
Let's
mean, this
ground
is
it. Let's
pretty
ground it.
woo, though. This, I would say, this is woo, woo,
This
woo.
is woo, but you know what? It's woo that I can do in a lab, and
Right.
I can tell you to let's not call if you have a peer review paper that's proving something, is it woo? When does it stop being
No,
woo?
you're right. It's not. I mean, but for the mainstream, I mean, I'm
It's
used
insane.
to this, but do you keep a journal like, or you should, I think, keep a journal for
Yeah, I
everything.
have plenty of notes on this. Plenty of notes.
But
Yes.
what if you kept a journal? I'm just suggesting you could do it like the same time every day, maybe at the same place. You just look up UPSIGHT for 15 and a half hour and then write down what you see if there's a continuity of
I
sorts.
like that. I haven't done that. No, I haven't done it because I take it for granted. Because it's always there, but at the same time, and it's like the idea yeah, no, I like that. I'll do that.
Well, I'm just curious what you would come up with. Like I had a friend, Harry Smith. He's kind of a famous musicologist who would record the sounds of the city every night at the same time to see if there was like some kind of flux or flow in the collective soundscape, something like that. You might see a continuity or you may not. I don't know. It seems pretty arbitrary.
It
Um,
is it seems arbitrary, like it's strong. Like I said, it was stronger at the beach, it seems. I told you about the airplane. It seems like late afternoon. My best time is not, I'm a morning person, but
uh,
late afternoon, let's call it between 3 and 5, it seems like it's the strongest. Again, I
well,
don't know.
do that every. I would just rejournal it, like
Yeah.
day one, this, saw this. And then I think, who knows, because you're the guy that maybe a story or narrative or something or patterns might unfold in a kind of your own controlled study.
Yeah, I think some things. I think there'll be some patterns there. Yeah, I like this. I like this a lot.
I mean, what else are you doing? Are you still in marketing? But this is
Yeah.
really your main.
This is my hobby. This is my thing. This is
Yeah.
my passion yeah, for sure.
Well,
This is my passion.
I'm really happy you've come. I mean, other people probably may have this and they never tell anyone about it because they don't want to think they're crazy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, the thing is, I went crazy. That's what's so wild. I don't know if I would have known about this. I don't know if I'd have been
Mm.
the fact that I literally lost my mind with the drug addiction psychosis and come out with this other thing. I think there was a reason this happened and then this happened, right?
Mm.
I think it was such a fine line. It's like, okay, that's insane. This is not, that's insane. That's psychotic, bipolar, schizophrenic, all these little pieces of it. This is what you would call, some normal person would say this itself is insane. I have the luxury or the horror of saying, you have no idea. This is really insane. This is cool.
Well, maybe there was a sort of breakdown in the corpus callosum that lets think. I mean, this is what maybe Ian McGilchrist would say, since the emissary is meeting the master right on
Yeah,
there.
good.
And
Yeah.
it's interesting. And when you when you were having the hallucinations, when you were psychotic, did they seem as real as well, or did you always
No,
have
I
a
wasn't doing hallucinations. I had psychotic. See, that's interesting. It was thoughts. I
uh,
believed things.
uh,
Nobody told me that. I just believed it. Like I would be talking to my son. I'm like, oh, that's not my son. He's been replaced by an alien. That was a
uh,
psych. Now remember, I was on drugs too.
right.
Right. So, so that's the case. So it wasn't like I had a vision or a hallucination. I had a thought, and the thoughts were just wrong and
Right, they were
absurd.
wrong, but you believed they were real at the
Oh,
time.
without a doubt. I acted like I walked out on my business. I walked out on my business, a thriving business. I literally walked out on it.
So, not to say what's happening is not real for you, but if those things were real that you believe, how do you know that this is not a project because of your, I mean, you know,
No, that's a
maybe,
good question. And I
yeah,
know that, let me give you an answer because I thought about that for years too.
yeah,
Because the way I'm moving through the rest of my life, the way I'm engaging with people, I'm using people as a pillar, right? I'm explaining it and people get it. I'm writing emails to all doctors and they understand it. There's pieces of it. I know I'm not psychotic anymore. You know, you could sit there and say, well, this is an element of that. You could, but every other way it's not. So maybe we need to think, you know, well, and I've got convinced people because it's true. You know what? This is not something clear might have happened. Something was open in the brain, but let's take a look at this, right? There's other pieces going on again. And the fact that I've had emails from other people saying they're seeing this is I'm telling you, every time I get an email, I'm like so happy.
right.
Every time someone emails me and says, I can do this too.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, psychotics are not functional people, and you weren't functional in that sense. Now you seem very functional. You have friends, you have family. So there might just be an awakening that's going on, and an opening, you know, a peek behind the veil. That seems more logical because,
It
you know,
does.
you seem to be, you know, a very regular person, a very, you know, honest, and, you know, and you're sincerely trying to understand an aspect of the mind that, you know, I mean, I think consciousness is so complex, and I think it's great you went to ions to start to look at that analysis. So what was the conclusion at the ions institute of what's going on?
Well, there's a blog post. If you want to go to the IONS website, there's a blog post that I wrote, Tom Matt, and there's a blog post that they both have the word upside vision. I can't recall the name of it, but the neuroscientist wrote. And they talk about the conclusions and what's going on and how we should study upside vision. That's what it is. How should we study upside vision moving forward? Is Tom Matt seeing more is the brain more, you know, seeing more? Is Tom's brain seeing more than most people? And if he is, what about the other psychic abilities? That's really what the gist of it is.
Well, do you have other psychic abilities maybe that
Well,
you,
remote viewing, sure,
oh,
remote viewing, yeah, that kind of thing. So, you know, I'm not an expert on those things at all. I cannot get in a lab and with any 100% confidence say that can happen. What I can do is get in a lab. We can hook me up if I wanted to and make sure something is shown and we can study that. We can see what's happening with my brain when these things come into my vision.
well, you know, I do teach remote viewing. You could take my next class and see if you want to improve your remote viewing skills using this app. It's like an app, this application.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Let me look at that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just practice remote viewing. There's like different, and see if, I don't know, they seem to be different areas of function that may overlap. And
I think they will. I think they are. I do. I think they're both separate psychic abilities that might overlap. Right. Think about this. If I was sitting next to the best remote viewer in the world, he's remote viewing. Let's say he's describing it and I'm seeing it. And I'm like, okay, I could write down exactly what he's seeing. Now we're talking again. Now we're like, okay, we're the same thing. We're seeing, and I'm picking up into perhaps his frequencies, right? Or he's picking up into mine.
well, that's another thing I just thought of is, why don't you go to the Monroe Institute? It's not far from you, and listen to the binaural beats. Have you done that? Have you done?
No, I haven't.
Do you
I
know
thought
about
it,
that?
Yeah, I sure do. Yeah, absolutely. And I've reached out to the Monroe Institute, and I just haven't heard back from them. And this was before Ion, so I'm kind of
Oh,
Ion.
well, I would just sign up for a class and go to
Yeah.
a course there. And I think that's going to have an effect on you. You know, I
Yeah, I
think,
think you're right. I think and you're right. It is on the East Coast, so it's a lot easier.
yeah, it's not far. So, yeah, I just met one of the women who runs it. And I think there's so much potential for you, Tom, in this field.
I do too. I feel like that too. I feel like that too. And that's what's coming together. What it
Yeah,
looks like, I'm not sure yet, but I think something's coming together.
I think so. I think you're onto something. I'll try to connect you with Lee. I think he might have insights into this. And yeah, thanks so much for sharing.
Thanks for having me on, Alan. This is a pleasure.
I mean, UPSIGHT might be the future of a dimensional breakthrough that, you know, you stumbled upon somehow. I mean, and because it's not that unusual. There are visionaries who see things, and throughout the centuries, Hildegard of that woman Hildegard would have visions like, and see things, and she predicted horseless carriages in the 1200s. She saw that. So there are visionaries, and even the guy who wrote H.G. Wells has had visions of things. He's one of the visions had is that everyone would be able to sit at their own desk and examine any document anywhere in the world. He had that vision of that. So, there's people have had visions that were, throughout history. So you're just another, not just, but you're a prophet of this time. And I think once you practice it somehow, or discipline your practice, I think things are going to unfold for you. And
that's what it feels like. I can tell you that, Alan. That's what it feels like.
Yes, you should maybe visit a shaman who's like, actually, I
haven't done that. That's a great idea. I have not done that.
Or a good psychic. I have a good psychic friends who could tell you what's actually happening. Maybe we could even do that on the show, where you talk about this and someone could come in and read you. And let's.
That's great. I'm open to that.
All right, let's try something like that.
Okay, yeah, that sounds fun.
I really enjoyed this conversation. Opened so much is coming forward. Open all our minds about what's possible that we haven't even thought of before. And this is something else. UPSIGHT. Do it.
UPSIGHT vision. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alan.
UPSIGHT vision. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. And I'm Alan Steinfeld. Thanks for watching this program. Subscribe, take out a chat, like, all those things. And we have more shows like this and others coming up.